It's a pleasure to be back with you for another training representing some fantastic employees. Listen, every training we do here on this digital platform is extremely important. This one is exceptionally important for the simple fact that the injury and fatality statistics are not in our favor when it comes to this topic, that being ladder safety. Even more specifically, portable ladder safety. I can't think of too many other tools responsible for a vast number of injuries and deaths each year. Speaking of numbers, let's talk stats for a minute. While falls remain a leading cause of unintentional injury nationwide, 43% of fatal falls in the last decade have involved a ladder. Among all workers across all work domains, approximately 20% of fall injuries involve ladders. Among construction workers, an estimated 81% of fall injuries treated in U.S. emergency rooms involved a ladder. In a 2015 study, falls to a lower level in any industry has accounted for 81% of all fatal falls. And hear this next stat, because the next time you think to grab a chair in your kitchen, to reach a high item, or replace a light bulb with a little step ladder, know this: of the cases where the height was known, more than 40% of the fatal falls, deadly falls, falls where someone died, were 15 feet or lower. What does that tell you? There are likely several things that could be said about this, but what it tells me is that there was no healthy fear involved when these falls took place. It tells me that there was a dangerous comfort level with the ladder or step ladder being used because the thought process was, I'm not that high. Maybe the thought of a fall went through their minds, maybe the possibilities of a broken arm or a goofy fall down into the shrubs in front of their house, like the Christmas Vacation scene where Clark is putting Christmas lights on his roof. But I can almost guarantee you that they were not thinking about dying those days. That's a scary thought. And actually, on that topic of putting up Christmas lights and assessing fall hazards, it's amazing how many of us admit to doing similar things at our own houses. Things many of us wouldn't likely do at work. But we sure make way for some horrible safety practices at home. But as these stats show us, in most cases, we aren't doing much better at work either. So the fact remains, we have to do a better job and gain some healthier fear when it comes to the use of portable ladders. So let's get into how we can do that. And if it's needed to be said again, let me remind each of you that no matter if you're in an office, field, or shop, and you have to utilize a portable ladder, the stats prove it. We need you to join us in this effort. So here's what we're going to look at. We're going to identify some common causes of ladder accidents. If we can learn from other common mistakes, we need to do that. We also want to talk briefly about selecting and inspecting the ladders correctly. How many times have you heard, get the right tool for the job? That definitely applies here. We'll also show you how to set up ladders properly, how to climb and work on ladders safely, and how to maintain, store, and transport ladders properly. The three most common causes of ladder accidents are accidents in which the wrong ladder is used, when a ladder fails because it's in poor condition, and accidents in which the ladder is used improperly. To go a little deeper into these accident scenarios, I want to run some more stats by you because these literally tell the story of what happened to individuals just like you and I who thought they were going to be fine when they used ladders in the wrong way. In a recent NIOSH study, NIOSH being the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, 1,400 ladder accidents were studied, and here's what they found. 57% of fall victims in the study were holding objects with one or both hands while climbing or descending the ladder. So right away, what does that tell you? The simple rule is that you have to maintain 3 points of contact the entire time you're climbing a ladder. How can you maintain 3 points of contact when you're holding tools or materials? That's exactly the point. You can't. So then I hear, but Jake, I have a bunch of tools and material I need to get up to the place I'm working at. So how do I do that? Great question. Get a tool belt. If that doesn't cut it, get a system in place where a teammate can assist you in getting you the tools or materials you need. What I also see in many cases is that a ladder in and of itself is the wrong tool for the project being done. In many cases, a scaffold system, scissor lift, or some other type of equipment is needed to do the job properly. So please make sure you're evaluating the possibility that a ladder may not even be the right tool. And that includes those of you office personnel that do field visits. Don't allow yourself to be put in harm's way because of a contractor's lack of providing the right tools. Now, back to the stats. 30% of fall victims in the same NIOSH study had wet, greasy, or oily shoes. 53% of straight ladders had not been secured or braced at the bottom. and 61% of those same straight ladders had not been secured at the top. 66% of accident victims had never been trained on how to inspect ladders for defects before using them, which also tells you what? We always expect a ladder to be ready to go simply because it's still in our shop or storage area. Nope, just because it's still there doesn't mean that it's still functional. And finally, a staggering 73% had not been provided training on the safe use of ladders. So obviously, one of the first things you are changing in these stats is that you're doing this training and therefore can no longer fall into that 73% of injured employees that had never learned what it meant to be safe on a ladder. The other percentages, well, we're going to get into those just a little bit later. As we review some basic fixes to address ladder hazards, I want to ask you, how many times have you found yourself in these types of scenarios? They happen far too often and they're simple fixes, but it takes a disciplined approach and consistent attitude to ensure you're not going to find yourself in the stats we just talked about. To begin with, a ladder must be the right height for the job so that you're not forced to overreach. The basic rule for overreaching can be defined in a word picture. Pretend you have a belt that hooks very tightly to the ladder and doesn't allow you to extend the center mass of your body outside of those two vertical supports. That's exactly what it should look like and feel like. In fact, while positioned on the ladder, it's a best practice to gently lay your hips into the ladder just between the vertical supports and never allow your hips to leave that central area. Regarding step ladders, they should be tall enough so that you don't have to stand on the top two steps, which would leave you nothing to hold on to and nothing to center your weight on. A straight or extension ladder should be tall enough so that you don't have to stand on the top 4 rungs. Secondly, a ladder must have the capacity to support the weight you're putting on it. Remember that the total weight a ladder has to support is your weight plus the weight of any tools and materials you use while working on the ladder. The weight capacity is displayed on a label affixed to the ladder itself. And let me add that these capacities must be legible. If the capacity can no longer be determined, you must either take the ladder out of service or you must contact the manufacturer to get those capacities. Here's the weight rating system. Roman numeral IA means the ladder can hold a maximum weight of 300 pounds. Roman numeral I by itself means a maximum weight of 250 pounds. Roman numeral II means a maximum weight of 225 pounds. And Roman numeral III means a maximum weight of 200 pounds. This should be pretty eye-opening for many of you. If you take your weight plus some work boots and tools, there are many of you, like myself, that exceed these ratings very quickly. Just me with no tools is 235 pounds. So that means IA and I are the only ladders rated to handle my weight within this category of ladders I just mentioned. Then throw some tools and materials in there and I may quickly find myself with only one option. Check those capacities and quickly. Here are some other considerations when choosing a ladder. The materials the ladder is constructed of may be a safety issue. Never use a metal ladder around electricity. Also check for metal parts and pieces and never use any type of ladder that is wet around electricity. Aluminum, steel, and acids are not compatible, so never use a metal ladder around corrosives. Finally, don't use metal ladders around flammables. The ladder could potentially cause a spark that could ignite those very flammables you're working around. Let's dig into the elements of ladder inspection. All ladders should be inspected before each use. That's a given, but how many of us actually do that? It doesn't take long to check a ladder to make sure it's safe to use, but those few minutes could be the most important of your life. So here's what you need to check. Steps or rungs are in good repair and free of mud, grease, oil, or sticky substances. Side rails have no cracks or splits. Metal parts are lubricated. Rope systems are not worn or frayed. Spreaders or other locking devices are in place and working properly. Splinters or sharp edges have been filed down. Safety feet are solid and in place. And metal ladders are free of dents and bent parts. You should also inspect ladders following any tip overs or possible damage to a ladder that has been struck by something, hit something, or even been dropped. When you uncover a safety problem or maintenance problem with a ladder during an inspection, don't use it. That simple statement should go without saying. But look at the stats again from our earlier discussion. People do it all the time. Instead, remove it from service and tag it to ensure no one else uses it. For example, you could write, do not use in big bold letters on a tag, and attach it to the ladder where it can be easily seen. Also, don't try to repair the ladders yourself. Just report the problem to maintenance or the powers that be and let them handle it from there. They'll fix the ladder if they can, or it'll be replaced with a new ladder. If there is no maintenance, get rid of it. Never take chances with a defective or damaged ladder. Your life and your quality of life is literally depending on it. When we look at ways to further avoid ladder accidents, here are some items that should be implemented when setting up the ladder for use. All right, here we go. Place the ladder on a firm, level surface and check to make sure the ladder is stable. If the ladder isn't stable, what's the likelihood that you'll be able to keep yourself centered on the ladder? Not likely. Make sure the surface is level. Okay, use wide boards under the ladder to give stability if the ground is soft. Make sure they're wide enough to accommodate the weight pressing down on the soft surface. Never set a ladder on top of a drum, stack of pallets, or other objects to gain more height. Use a taller ladder instead. If you set up a ladder on such an unstable base, you're just asking for an accident. This is especially true of the ladder combo of forklifts and scissor lifts to gain extra height. Again, you're asking for a traumatic brain injury at that point. Okay, never set up a ladder in front of a door unless the door is locked or blocked, or you've got someone standing on the other side to keep people from opening the door. Seems like a no-brainer, but why do you think I'm including this as a note? Because it happens. Never lean a ladder against a surface that isn't strong enough to support your weight, such as a window or an object that might move under your weight. Never fasten two ladders together for additional height. Instead, use a taller ladder or an extension ladder designed for two ladder coupling. And finally, make sure the spreaders on step ladders are fully extended and locked in place, and that locking devices on extension ladders are secured. If one is broken and one works, do we keep that in service and hope it handles the capacity? No, that's exactly what you don't do. Remember that the capacities were tested with a fully operational and undamaged ladder. If one part works and one part doesn't, you might as well cut those capacities in half and probably more. Either way, don't use them and mark them out of service. Here's some other ladder safety setup tips that are both practical and easily applicable with whatever job you're using a ladder for. Remember this simple 4-to-1 rule and place the base of the ladder 1 foot from the wall for every 4 feet between the base and the support point. For example, if it's 8 feet from the base of a ladder to its support point, the base of the ladder should be 2 feet away from the building. Another way to think of the 4-to-1 rule is to count the rungs between the base and the support point and then divide by 4. For example, say you count 8 rungs between the base and the support point. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So in this case, you should place the base of the ladder 2 feet from the wall. Also be sure extension ladders are at least 3 feet above a support point, such as the edge of a roof, before you access it. Also make sure that the upper section of an extension ladder overlaps and rests on the bottom section. And the overlap should always be on the climbing side of the ladder. For ladders of 36 feet or more, the overlap should be at least 3 feet. Also be sure to secure ladders at both the top and bottom. Now, take a moment and think about how you set up ladders or ladders you access in the shop and field and even in the office as well. Do you always follow these rules and make sure the ladder is stable before you climb? If not, why not? When you hear that ladders must be well maintained to keep them in good, safe condition and make them last longer, this is what it should include. Checking joints between the steps and side rails to make sure they're tight. Testing hardware and fittings to make sure they're secure. Lubricating movable parts when necessary so that they operate freely. Replacing worn rope on extension ladders. Making sure safety feet are in good condition. And cleaning rungs and steps to keep them free of grease and oil. Remember that ladder repairs should be made only by qualified personnel. Some regulations may prohibit repairs from being made, so please be sure to check with your supervisor or the manufacturer of the ladder to know for sure. Listen, don't get on a ladder that doesn't meet the criteria we've discussed today. It's not worth it. Proper storage is also important to keep ladders in safe condition. Ladders should be stored securely, out of the way, so that they can't trip people or fall on a passerby or be damaged by heavy equipment. This includes cars in certain storage areas or garages. Short step ladders can be stored vertically. Straight ladders should be stored flat on racks with adequate support to keep them from sagging, or they can be hung horizontally on wall hooks. Never store materials on top of a ladder that is stored horizontally. This can damage the ladder and also cause it to warp. All ladders should be kept in well-ventilated areas away from heat and moisture. Think about your ladder storage areas and storage requirements. Make sure you always store ladders correctly and safely. In closing, I want to encourage you that each of you now have most of the training necessary to be successful regarding your portable ladder program. But now the hard part. Your willingness to both incorporate these principles into your ladder safety program and doing every single one of them. The alternative is not pretty. We talked a lot about deaths from less than 15 feet high that were shocking to everyone involved in those cases and likely never thought their life was in danger. But what we didn't even begin to discuss were the injuries. Broken necks and backs with lifelong chronic pain, the potential of being on disability for the rest of your life, traumatic brain injuries that can literally change personalities, personalities that change relationships, relationships that change family dynamics, and family dynamics that can change your outlook on life. All because you chose the wrong ladder, the shorter ladder, the broken ladder, the ladder with a low weight capacity. You chose to reach out too far away from the center of the ladder. You chose to carry tools and materials up and down the ladder. Do you see a theme here? It's a choice. Please make the right one. I'm Jake Wolfenden, and we tell you these things because we care about each and every one of you watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next training.